do this. All right. Uh, so we are wrapping up M3 today, and I'm seeing a few things. Okay, so CG just pointed out it is now available. So maybe it released at 11:30 or something like that. So your feedback from M2 is now available to you. So there was no class activity for today. That is correct. So I, might have missed it last time. There was an announcement on that last time, but there is no class activity for today. It's more of a thinking, doing type session and today than a new content sort of session. So let's get into a few of the logistics, and then we'll get into kind of where we're at on M3 and such. So this is National Student Employee Appreciation Week. So wanted to shout out to our peer teachers, our graders, and then as well CG and I are both grad students. So definitely Gabby, Kevin, Vedant, Catherine, JJ, and Arvind. They're your peers as far as undergraduates, and they've been doing a great job supporting each other and grading. So please continue to use them and reach out for help. If your teams, mostly I've been jumping into rooms to help to answer quick questions, but if your team, as you're moving forward, would like somebody to stick around a little bit longer, if your team would like, if you're not here today and your team or your whole team's not here today, and you'd like somebody to stick around, jump into your session at another time, our graders or peer teachers have been very generous in their time. So they could, we could try and find somebody to jump into your time whenever that is and help. So particularly as we're getting back into M4 and coding and bringing everything to a close for this project, you might have a little bit more intensive questions and a little bit more need to work longer sessions. And so please, these folks have been doing a great job so far. And then let's continue to use them and use their experience and talents. And so, CG and I are both grad students. I'm about to graduate. My dissertation is submitted. So theoretically, sometime in May, I will move to the official graduation status. But, appreciate his work and everything he does as well. And so I think we're all peers in that we're engineers, but we're also on a little bit different track. We're a little bit further along in our education. So wanted to not make a line there, but at the same time recognize the fact that you might view us differently, but we are all actually fall under this category. We are all student employees, and I appreciate everybody's contributions. The transition to major stuff is kind of coming up, and you either have already this morning or will at some point today receive an email from the dean about the transition to major. I have not seen that email, so I can't speak to it, but we were given a heads up about that email coming out. And so some of the key messages in there, and you should be reading this carefully yourself, is that the enrollment to majors is changing a little bit. So you can, and you've seen this before, and we'll talk about it again, choose a pass, no pass option. And that will not hurt you in your transition to major, but it does change things a little bit. So the guarantee policy is suspended in that, I think, if I understand that policy correctly, and again, I haven't gone through this process, so don't take my word as the final word. I think that has something to do with if your GPA is above a certain level, you're guaranteed in, and that is suspended to some degree, in that because you take a pass, no pass, it's not going to hurt you around that guarantee policy. What they're trying to do is, when it's available, match as many people with their first choices as possible. I was told that last year, 91% of the people got their first choice. So that's, a good odds of you getting your first choice. The biggest takeaway from this is if you're not sure what this email means, then you should probably find time to speak with your advisor and try and schedule that sooner rather than later, because when we get closer to that May 1st date, excuse me, of when you have to make your pass, no pass decision, it'll probably be quite busy to get those people. So having a good plan for where you stand and what you're going to do across your classes is probably not a bad idea. Remember, you have until May 1st to make that decision. So that gives us another 2 weeks essentially. And you're going to have a lot more grades coming in this class, and I'm sure other classes before you need to make that final decision. So just keep that in mind. And as I said, I wanted to give a little bit of context to this email, but as I said, I have not seen the email. So the best resource for that is your advisor, who can give you the best information on your transition to major. So hopefully here, everybody's been doing, as I said, our graders have been doing a good job, peer teachers have been doing a good job. We should have feedback for you on M3 quickly, but that is due by class 28, by the start of next class. And then immediately you're going to start working on your implementation of that code and working on that code. To some degree, as I said, the feedback is important. To some degree, you got to start somewhere. You're going to start making changes somewhere. So the plan is to get that feedback back to you quickly, and we're just continuing to cycle through that, but don't hold up on feedback, because you probably will be trying a bunch of different things. I've actually been continuing to play with my version of the project, and I've found some interesting nuances, things I can play with inside of there. Maybe we'll talk about it, show it at some point. I'm not going to diverge too much into that, but there are all sorts of interesting ways and tools to be able to come up with different numbers as it goes forward. So another big important thing is the exam opens up as of Friday. So exam 3 will open at 7 a.m. on Friday. So for all of you who want to get a big start on it, you can get up nice and early on Friday and start the exam. For the other 1,795 students, if you're one of those 5, I appreciate you. We'll wake up sometime on Friday, and my suggestion is to give it a look on Friday. There is exam review out there already from past exams. We are supposed to get an exam review specific to this exam sometime in the next soon, is what I'm told. When that comes out, I'm going to take a look at it, and I will probably, I'm planning to at least, make some sort of video review for you to work through on your own in your own time. In this case, working through on your own is not a bad thing, because you are expected to be working on this test entirely on your own. You can ask questions, you can't ask for help. So you can reach out to the peer teachers, to CG, to myself, and say, hey, I don't understand what this question means, or how to get by this technical hurdle of making my own individualized test. We'll talk about that more in a second. But what you can't do is say, hey, on line 17, my code's busted and what's wrong? The expectation is you're supposed to be able to work through those things to some degree on your own. If you're not sure if it's a technical issue or your code that's a problem, I mean, if you're like, hey, I think my MATLAB's broken or online MATLAB's not working, please reach out to me and ask me that question, and I will be glad to say, oh, you have an issue here. I'm not going to say on line 17 you have an issue, but I will be glad to say, like, okay, no, the technology is working as it's supposed to, and I'll give you some reassurances that that you're either on the right track and the fault is in your code, or oh yeah, there is actually a technical glitch here. And so don't feel like you can't ask anything at all. But if you're not sure, please ask me. But if you have a question such as, this test will have a, there'll be a, if you're familiar with .m files, there's also something called a .p file, which is where a commercial entity can create some code and then essentially encrypt it. So you can use the functionality, but you can't see the original source code. And it's a way you can sell pieces in MATLAB and whatnot. So you'll get one of those. that will generate your test for you specifically. So, when you get your test, you will go to this tool, you'll put in your Purdue University ID, and you will get a question that is different from everybody else's question inside of the test. It's going to be a similar type of question. It'll just have different inputs or a different variation in some interesting way. If for some reason that doesn't work, please reach out and let us know. And that's the thing I want to make sure you understand how it works and how it's used. With that, there's also going to be a few additional things you'll set up your test with. So that's the thing I'm not concerned about, but I most want to not have an issue. And so my suggestion is on Friday, get your test, generate the things for your test, and then from there, work on it as you want to. So the test essentially is a extended homework problem that you have less ability to ask help on. But I think I saw it was 11 questions. It's expected that it would be the equivalent of a 1-hour exam. So, the way things work, do I expect you to get it done in 1 hour? No, it probably will take a couple hours. It's some code involved. But it should not be, I'm working on this 6 hours a day, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, to be able to turn it in by Wednesday at midnight. So it's something that, hey, I'm going to work on a problem now, I'll come back to it later. The advice is that I'm giving you is, if you generate everything on Friday and you look at the questions, you'll be able to ask questions on Friday to say, I don't understand what this question is asking, or those types of things. Then whether or not CG and I respond to you within an hour or two on Saturday, Sunday should make less of a difference because you asked us on Friday. I'll be around this weekend. I'll respond to emails as they come in as I'm sitting here, but I don't plan on sitting in front of my computer all weekend. So come Monday, there might be a lot of questions waiting for us, and then we will answer them and get back to you as appropriate. But then again, we have Monday, Tuesday, and then Wednesday to finish it. So I don't think this is a big stress test, but at the same time, I want you to take it seriously up front, so that way you're not doing everything at the last minute, both asking questions and getting it submitted. The other interesting bit here is, remember, you can submit this as you go. Please don't start the test on Friday and forget to submit it until Wednesday evening and say, oh my gosh, the world's ending because this is falling down. There is no late on this. You can't say I needed to use my 24-hour late on the test. You've got plenty of days to make this happen. So what you can do is, if you finish one of the problems on a Friday, submit it. And then if you figure out you did something wrong, resubmit it. You can continue to update your grade, your submission, all the way up till that midnight on Friday. If for some reason, either sitting here now or you're watching a video recording of this, you know that you have some technical challenges. You have been on campus, but you're about to get on an airplane and heading back to home, or when you get back to home, you're going to be quarantined for 2 weeks and you can't get to this right away. Don't panic about that either. Let us know the details of your situation. We know when you go off and access the test, so we can kind of figure out when to give you your window. That's not to say, hey, I'm going to take the test later. This is the window to take the test. And so please do so. But again, for those of you who are in truly exceptional circumstances, we can work those out on an individual basis. So if you think you have exceptional circumstances, let us know. All right, so let me take just a second to let, one other thing, important to note, you're being asked to acknowledge the academic honesty statement, as you do on every test within this, just to remind yourself that you're supposed to be working on this on your own, so the product of your work. Your work can be looking up, searching, bring stuff. Your work should not be posting the question to a discussion board to say, hey, does anybody know how to solve this? That would be beyond the pale of academic integrity. This is not about professional work. Of course, in professional work, you reuse code, you ask for help, you do things like that. This is the exception where we're asking for you to contribute your work. And so please know that you'll be asked to assert to that. So let me just give a second to pause to see if there's any other questions in your mind floating around about exam 3, we can ask them at any point, but you might have a pressing question now. So let me just pause for just a second. I'm going to take a sip of my drink. Sam, we can check on that. Maybe CG can work with you on that in the background here as we get going. All right. Next couple bits are pretty standard. Your pass, no pass decision. We talked about it a little bit already. The important update here is what team, there's still 185 points left on milestones 3 through 5. So that includes the test, a little bit more CAPME, and A18, so for tiny points, and then most of it being in the project. I'm sorry. So yeah, so there's a total of 270 points left if you're doing your math and calculating where you're at this point. Again, that decision doesn't have to be till May 1st. If just keeping the slides in here, if you need access to MATLAB, hopefully you figured that out by now. But there is a space out there for that. All right, so milestone 3. We've been through class 26. Started working on milestone 3. There's no video activity for class 27. And so basically you're out there, working on the last bit of your milestone today. So as a reminder, you do not need to update your code for milestone 3. You're planning the updates to the code. If you have your plans in place, feel free to work on your updates. You're just working ahead on milestone 4. But that's not what you're turning in. You don't need to have better answers for milestone 3. So don't feel like you have to be done, that you have to panic and stay up all night to get the compile and run and come up with better answers. There is one update to milestone 3 that was made. I'm not, excuse me, I'm not sure if we've updated. I'll double check on Blackboard if it's already been updated or not. But on line 3, it used to say steps 1 through 4, and it's only talking about steps 1 and 2. So the teaching team caught that as a problem. And then there was a number of boxes here that said something about step 2A. This is actually the figures from step 3. So redoing step 1 and 2 that is being asked to attach there. So if you've already downloaded this, if you've already started working on it, note these changes. If you're confused about it, just ask and we'll put it out there. If you haven't started this document, then it might be updated out there. We'll double check that here in a little bit, make sure it is updated. So the idea here is that you are taking your M2 algorithm, you're tweaking the code enough to be able to load in and use the benchmark data, and then you're generating the figures it's asking for and the V0 values, Vmax, and the KM values for that benchmark. And so your values, so when I ran my code, some of the V0 values were almost exact, some of them were pretty far off. My Vmax value was pretty close. My KM was fairly far off, 5% off or something like that. So I've spent, as I said, some time tweaking. I actually went and did the code because for the amount of time I would spend planning, I can write the code. I'm not saying you're like that. So if you have played in code, that's fine. I just in all transparency, I can plan out an idea. The problem is if I plan out an idea, I'm curious if it'll work, and so I just go and implement it in the next 15 minutes and then see. Sometimes it doesn't work, and so I just abandon that and try something different. I've done several of those. I had a lot of different approaches that I'm like, yeah, this isn't working out. I actually just commented them out and left them there so we can talk about them at some point, probably coming into Thursday or next Tuesday. But at this point, again, you're only asked to talk about what approaches seem useful and productive. So here's a little bit of a summary of that's provided, to of what to do to finish up milestone 2, 3. I'll let you read this because you might be at different spaces, um, as as your team's working. But it's out there in the slides. You can upload it and check that out. And so then from there, any last minute questions before we jump into our breakout groups? All right, so I'm going to go ahead and